Hi, Alicia here. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the books that I read in the month of April. Yo! So I hope you are all doing well, feeling good, keeping safe, keeping sane. In the month of April, I read 9 books. It was a really good reading month for me, all things considered. I enjoyed all of the books that I read. There was one book that I did DNF about halfway through. I will talk about that book as well. So when I go through the books, I will go over them in the order that I read them. And that just makes the most sense for me in terms of organizing my thoughts. But if you have any thoughts on a good way to organize a wrap-up, whether from best to worst, worst to best, please let me know and I will consider that for next time. So without further ado, let's get into those books. The first book that I will mention is the book that I did DNF, and that is Headhunter by Michael Slade. I didn't necessarily hate this book, it just really wasn't what I wanted to be reading at this time. The reason why I picked this up was because it is a procedural crime thriller about a murderer who kills women and decapitates them and then leaves their body strewn throughout downtown Vancouver. And I live on Vancouver Island, so Vancouver is very close to me, and I just thought that would be a fun little thriller romp. And the way this book is organized, it jumps from time to place to characters. It introduces so many different characters, so many different plot lines, so many different timelines, all just like one after the other. And I was about 150 pages in and I still didn't know what was going on. I still didn't know who we were following, who we were meant to be caring about. So it just wasn't what I wanted to be reading at this time, and I just couldn't follow it. I tried reading this book throughout the entire month of April. I kept going back to it and picking it up and being like, oh, I'll try it again, until finally I'm just like, no, I'm not into this right now. So if that premise intrigues you, try it. Maybe it'll work better for you. It just didn't work for me. The first book that I finished in the month of April is Elizabeth by Ken Greenhall. I'm now realizing that Ken Greenhall is just he's a great author. He wrote some good books. Earlier this year I read Hellhound by him, and that book was so fun. That follows a sociopathic murdering dog. So that's fun. Elizabeth is about a 14-year-old girl who believes she is or has become possessed by a witch. She has become a witch. There is a witch that visits her in her mirror at night, and they plot out bad deeds together. Elizabeth is a really uncomfortable character. She's a hyper-sexualized 14-year-old girl who is in a relationship with her uncle, and she is kind of controlling and taking over the household that she lives in and all of the people that are in it. But it's also a lot deeper than that, in that it explores the psychological aspects of trauma and abuse, in that Elizabeth might not actually be possessed by a witch, or she may not actually be a witch, and it's more just like a delusion that she's having from the sexual abuse that she is receiving. So it was good. It's not the best book I ever read. I gave it a 3 out of 5, but it was a fun time. It makes you think, it makes you cringe, and I recommend checking out Elizabeth. The next book that I would like to talk about is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I listened to this book on audio, I listened to it on Scribd, and if you have a Scribd membership, I highly recommend checking out this audiobook. This is a 5-star read. It is the only 5-star read I had this month. And not only is it a 5-star read, but it is probably one of the best books that I have ever read. And the narrator for the audiobook just did such a great job in bringing this story and character to life. If you can mess with audiobooks and you're looking for something to listen to, I highly recommend My Dark Vanessa. This follows a woman in a dual timeline, one in 2017 when she is 32, and also in the early 2000s, I think around 2006, when she is 15. And when she's 15, she goes to a boarding school in Maine, and she is essentially groomed into a relationship with her English professor. And in 2017, it's like the height of the Me Too movement, and all of these women are coming forward and accusing her teacher, Mr. Strain, of sexual assault. And I have so many feelings about this book. It just really was such an upsetting book, and just it explored just a character and a point of view that is just so important to be heard. Because Vanessa, when all of these women are coming forward and accusing this man of sexual assault, Vanessa doesn't get it. Like, she does not feel that her experience was abuse or assault. It was like the greatest love of her life in her point of view. She doesn't identify as a survivor. She doesn't identify as a victim. But from the reader's point of view, you are reading both of these timelines, both from Vanessa's point of view. So you can see from this like childhood innocence why she would feel like this relationship was romantic, but you're reading it and you're like, this is disgusting and disturbing. And this man is like manipulating her and grooming her, and it is so transparent and so vile. But then as an adult, she is completely changed by this experience. Like, her personality and the way that she acts around other people is because of this experience that she had. And it explores something that I'd never really considered before around how this like new good culture of being able to like speak out and call out like these horrible men is often like just as traumatic, or maybe even more so traumatic than the actual experience itself for some of these survivors of abuse. Because Vanessa doesn't identify as a victim. She doesn't think that anything bad has happened to her. But society and these other survivors are saying, you have to speak out against this. You have to speak out against him because of what he did to us. But she doesn't feel that way. So she's like basically being forced into confronting something that she isn't ready to confront. And it's really traumatic, and it was really upsetting, and it was just such a powerful point of view to see. And also Vanessa isn't even that likable of a character because of the experience that she had. And I feel like it was really important to see a character who isn't a likable person, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve justice for what happened to her. I really commend this author for telling this story, and it was really powerful, really disturbing. Trigger warnings for everything to do with pedophilia and sexual assault and sexual abuse. The author goes to all of the places and does not hide anything, so consider this book with care, but it is just it's just so good. The next book I read in April is Other Voices, Other Tombs, edited by Brehl and Sullivan. This is a horror anthology short story collection. There's about 14 short stories in here, all by different authors. And this book came up as one of my D20 challenge reads, to read a book that starts with the letter O. And I'm really happy I read this. This was an awesome collection. I don't think there was any stories in here that I like straight up didn't like. All of them were good. Some of them were more mediocre, but some of them were amazing. A few that I straight up loved in this book was one by Anya Alborn called The Governess. That book was really scary, and I am not a parent, but if I were a parent, I feel that book would be terrifying. So the one by Anya Alborn was great. There was a story by Michael Wehunt, Comfortable Gods, that was grotesque and amazing. I loved that one too. There's one by Gemma Amor in here that is great. And the one that moved me the most was called Alone in the Dark by J.D. McGregor. It's the last book in this collection, and it finished the book with a really good taste in my mouth. That story was really disturbing and upsetting and just like great horror. This was a great collection. I highly recommend it if you are into horror short stories. And this was a good one. A 4-star read for me. Next, after all of that horror and disturbing literature, I read a nice little palate cleanser. I read Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sukegawa. This is a Japanese contemporary story that is just a little slice of pie. It was really good. This follows a man named Sentaro who is he's living his life in a way that is not, like, he doesn't feel good about his life. He feels like a bit of a failure. He is working in a sweet shop making sweet bean paste for dorayaki. It's like a nice little sweet treat. And he is not passionate about it. He doesn't care about it. He is a bit of an alcoholic. He spent some time in jail, and he's living his life feeling indebted to other people and not really pursuing his own passion. He doesn't even know what his own passion is. And then he meets this elderly woman who comes in for a job, and this woman is a survivor of leprosy, and she has lived a life of like facing so much prejudice against her from having had leprosy and being like segregated to a specific place to live, but just has such a positive outlook on life. And they become friends, and they make sweet bean paste together, and you kind of learn about their histories, and you learn about their past traumas. And it was just a really beautiful little story. This definitely has conversations around like what it means to like contribute to your society, and that you don't need to have done anything physical. Like, you don't need to have like made this like huge lasting impression on the world for your life to have meaning. It just makes you feel good. I highly recommend Sweet Bean Paste if you're looking for a little nice time. The next book that I read that I would like to talk about is Last Days by Brian Evenson. And all I can say to start is, wow. This book is insane and amazing. This was like a 4.5 star read for me. To be honest, if I hadn't read My Dark Vanessa this month, that completely like blew away what a 5-star read means to me. This book may have been a 5-star, but if I'm just comparing the two, it just didn't quite make it there. But this is amazing, and I highly recommend it. This is like a horror, like detective noir black comedy. It is following a man named Klein. He is an ex-detective. He is retired from the force, not because he is at the age of retirement, but because on one of his missions, he ended up having his hand cut off by his perp. So he's just like over it. He's over life. He's over being a cop. He just wants to be left alone. But nope, nobody's gonna leave Klein alone. So he's just living his life, and then this cult called the Brotherhood of Mutilation comes and abducts him. They take Klein, they bring him into their cult. He doesn't want to be there. And they're like, you're here because you're one of us. You are an amputee. And so the Brotherhood of Mutilation, it is a amputation cult where they cut off their limbs to become closer to God. That's how that works, right? And they've brought him into this cult because they want him to solve a crime within. So some sort of crime has happened inside this cult, and they wouldn't just let any cop in. They wouldn't let any detective in. But Klein, he's an amputee, so he's allowed into this cult. And this is bonkers. And I think the reason why I love this so much is because it's just like this weird contrast between the writing that is so... the writing is just, it's so clipped, and it's so controlled, and it's so detached, but everything that is happening around you is insane, and just like a wild roller coaster of a ride. And you're experiencing everything from Klein's point of view, and Klein is like, he's almost like a non-character where you aren't sure like what he's thinking, and you're just experiencing what he's experiencing. He's kind of just like this vessel for everything that's happening around him, and he just doesn't want to be here. He just wants to go home. He wants to be left alone, just like I would want to go home and be left alone. But he's got to be in this cult. He's being forced to solve a crime. This is hilarious. It is violent. It is gory. If a cult trope is something that you can mess with Last Days by Brian Evenson. It is all I can say. That it is great. After Last Days, I picked up another Japanese contemporary. I picked up the Travelling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. And I highly recommend reading this if you're just looking for a book that is going to gently cradle and kiss your heart. It is so touching and so tender, and it's a really feel-good novel. This is from the point of view of a cat named Nana. He was born a stray, living as a stray, totally cool being a stray, until he is kind of unwittingly adopted by this man named Satoru, and they just like live this harmonious life together until one day Satoru is like, I gotta get rid of Nana. I have to get rid of Nana. I need to rehome Nana. And Nana's like, I don't know. I mean, we're kind of fine. But Satoru, there's something's going on, and he's got to get rid of Nana. So they travel together across Japan, revisiting some of Satoru's friends, being like, can you adopt Nana? Are you able to take care of this wonderful cat? And at each of these destinations, Satoru kind of travels down memory lane. And it's all from Nana's point of view, so Nana's kind of trying to sleuth out what's going on. This is a very simple plot. It is a very tender plot, but it is a story that is going to just rip you up and make you feel really nice. Like a nice cat. Finally, closing in on the end of April, from April 24th to 30th, it was Half-A-Ween-A-Thon, and I read 2 books for Half-A-Ween-A-Thon that very conveniently, in my own way, fit all of the Half-A-Ween-A-Thon prompts, so we're golden there. The first book that I read for Half-A-Ween-A-Thon was Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. This was also one of my D20 challenge prompts, so we're great. I think I forgot to mention that Headhunter was also one of my D20 challenge reads, so I'm just gonna chalk that one up as read. We're good. So for Half-A-Ween-A-Thon, I read Summer of Night for a book that featured something supernatural, and for a book with a spooky word in the title. Night. Night's scary. It's dark. So, Summer of Night follows 5 boys in 1960 Illinois in a, I believe, fictional town called Elmhaven. Please correct me if that's a real place, but in my head it was fictional, I'm not sure. And they're all like 11 or 12 years old, and it's like right at the beginning of summer, just at the end of school. And some sort of supernatural evil is coming and taking over this town that is emanating from their school. and they take it upon themselves. It's their own like childhood mission to confront and defeat this evil. No adults allowed. This was an amazing coming of age horror. Like the sense of place and the atmosphere of what's happening was just like, it was very richly developed story. I did have a few issues with it. I felt like the pacing was a little bit off. There is a character in this book that I absolutely loved. And I actually kind of hate this book for what happened to this character and just like the raw deal that this character faced. So if you've read this book, I hope you know what I'm talking about. But I actually considered not finishing this book because of just how angry I was. But I mean, anger is a feeling that's good. I mean, if a book makes you feel furious, I assume the author did their job. Amazing coming of age horror, very comparable to It. Also, if you like Stranger Things, you will love Summer of Night. This is basically just like the next season of Stranger Things, so we're good. We're good there. Summer of Night, great coming of age horror, furious about what happened to one of these characters. Furious. Another 4-star read for me. And finally, the last book that I read in the month of April, and also rounding off Half-a-Weenathon, was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This, in the Half-a-Weenathon, was to read a book and then watch the film or television adaptation of it. I watched the 2018 adaptation of this, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the book. The book was amazing. I'll get to that in a second. And the movie was pretty good. The movie did change some weird parts. They changed some parts that I found kind of questionable. But overall, I feel like they captured the characters really well, especially Uncle Julian. Crispin Glover did a pretty amazing job of capturing that character. So we're good there. Anyways, We Have Always Lived in the Castle is a gothic mystery horror. This is following the Blackwood family, Mary Cat, Constance, and their Uncle Julian living in an estate in Vermont. The town hates them, especially Constance, because their whole family 6 years prior died in a poisoning for which Constance is blamed. But not only for the poisoning, but also just like the Blackwood family in general is like a bane on this community. They're just like living up on their hill in their castle and like taunting this town in some way, like status versus the town kind of thing. So the whole town hates them, but these three family members are just living their lives, doing their thing. And it is told from the point of view of Mary Cat Blackwood, who is definitely an unreliable narrator. And if you are into like the unreliable narrator trope, this is an exquisite interpretation of that. This book it's so beautiful and moody and ominous, and it's written in this ethereal prose that it was just kind of like walking through like a thick, dense fog. Like I loved the experience of reading this. It was just had this like atmosphere that you could almost like touch and taste. Like it was an amazing atmosphere. The family was very bizarre. Mary Cat is just like one of the most intoxicating characters I've ever read. Like she's not necessarily likable, but she is. Like she's just such a strange character. Like if you want to read something that is going to at once make you feel sad and scared and concerned and also like just like a little bit in love with these like really bizarre characters, I highly recommend this book. Like I've heard so many good things, and it definitely lived up to even maybe like blew out of the water my expectations for this. This was also a 4-star read for me. So there you have it. Those were the 9-ish books that I read in the month of April. Well, we got 8 8 concrete reads and 1 DNF, but what can you do? You can't always win. So if you've read any of these, please let me know what you thought. If there are any books that sound like these that you think I might like, please let me know that too. And I am always looking for recommendations. I had a lot of fun with Half-A-Ween-a-thon. With my D20 challenge, I'm going to consider that a success that I at least picked up all 3 of the books that I rolled there. And yeah, until next time, see you, pals.